Welcome to Backstage with Geoffrey Morrissey. We are not backstage. We are in a B- coffee shop in the middle of Boston, but we are joined by merchandise, so that's pretty cool. How are you guys? Would you mind just introducing yourselves?
Hi, I'm Carson. I sing and play guitar.
I'm Dave. I play guitar and a bunch of other stuff.
I'm Pat. I play bass and sing.
I'm Leo. I play drums.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us. There aren't even enough seats, which I do feel bad about. I'm sorry, Leo.
Go on over here, Leo.
It's cool. We're kind of into this, you know. We like it. We like it when it's more frustrating than normal. You know.
I mean, speaking of frustrating, you guys did save me a ride on Boston's public transportation system, which is right out there, which is the definition of frustrating.
Is it bad?
It's awful because, I mean, the Green Line goes in 8 different directions, and BU, that campus alone, has 4 different stops on it.
Drop out of BU.
Oh, pretty much. I mean, it's like, can these kids not walk from Middle Campus to like West Campus? But that's my own.
I'm fascinated with mass transportation because in Tampa, where I'm from, you're treated like a criminal if you have to take mass transportation. So it's really interesting when you go to a city and it exists, but it's difficult. And I always kind of wonder what it's like to grow up with that dynamic because it's just terrible. Most of the time in Florida, you spend, you know,
In a car.
yeah, you basically spend the whole day in a car, in traffic, whatever, looking at another car, so.
Well, there is a lot of that too. In fairness, coming from the suburbs and having to come up here every day, it's a little bit of a challenge. But I just completely lost my train of thought. But you guys have been doing some pretty cool stuff. You just released your second album on 4AD. That is your second label release. How has the recording process changed now that you're working with a label, or has it at all?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. We worked in a studio in Italy with a friend of ours, Zicho, who's a great engineer, and you know we went in with 30 songs, and we sort of touched and played around with all these, you know, songs and different ideas for songs, and you know we picked 9 out of them. We did a whole lot more. But I would say for previous records, I think we would kind of like work on we'd focus on something and sort of execute it with a few B-sides or a few outtakes, and this record was like more outtakes than anything else. And maybe it's because it took us 2 years to do something from the last one, but I don't know. So I think things about it changed that maybe I'm not even completely aware of, because you know we did it last year. You know, we basically spent a whole year from like conception to whatever, like actual execution to finishing touches to all that stuff. So I feel like the process was kind of a blur. I feel like I'll understand more about it maybe after tour, because it's basically like into the studio, working, touring, you know, and then you kind of have time to look at it after. But I don't know. I think it's you know, it's an evolution like anything else.
I was gonna say, what did y'all learn from or about an album after touring it for a while?
It depends. Each one, I think, is a different learning process. Mm-hmm. I think the early ones were just sort of trying to get over the fear of showing yourself or showing too much of yourself. You know, even the first LP that we did, I think, took about a year. You know, like not for like the recording process and post-production and all that, but it took a year, like after recording, after it was finished, until it came out. So there's a really long process where you're just kind of exhausted, and you know you just really want this thing to come out, and by the time it's there, it's like you maybe lost the moment, you know. Mm-hmm. And then we've done other things where the turnaround was extremely fast. So you know, I don't know. It's interesting. Like for us, I don't think we have a plan or a way to go through it, and most of the time it's like real life where you learn from experience, and you know, you can't be pragmatic in the moment. You have to be, you know, whatever, everything becomes hindsight or something. But I think with the number of records we've done, which is a lot, we've done recorded a lot of music in this band and other bands, and yeah, I don't know. I think now we're at a different phase of it, and I wouldn't say that we necessarily like learn in the moment or learn after the fact. It's just sort of like one big kinetic ball of experience, and you know, And sometimes it's hard to separate it, even when you separate your life into chapters of records or something like that. Yeah.
And now, so you learned about Boston that we have a frustrating transportation
It's
system.
true.
This is going to be an awful segue, by the way.
Beautiful.
You learned that we have a terrible transportation system. What do you pick up on in different parts of the country or different parts of the world when you spend so much time touring and seeing it? Like, have you learned a little bit about America or Europe or wherever you're playing?
Yeah. I've learned that we're living in a globalized culture, and that things that make individual places unique are becoming fewer and fewer, which is sort of a shame. I feel like we grew up on the cusp of, sort of this massive cultural shift, and we're seeing the effects in politics, we're seeing the effects in society wanting to change, we're seeing, everything happen at the same time, whereas, decades ago, information was much slower and societies sort of kept to themselves. But now it's like we have new worlds constantly, coming into our lives, but they're becoming part of our lives. It's not like there's a separation anymore, even when things are separated. So I think it's, the plus side of that is like we can make friends and travel the world, and we are sort of welcome in a lot of places, and we can feel comfortable and at home, I think, in some of the strangest, most faraway places. But the downside is everything looks like, a Starbucks at an airport or something like that.
Yeah.
It's which is depressing, but it's also just sort of like something that I think is a natural process, and people kind of have to become exhausted with this globalized culture in order for a new one to be born out of it. And so I don't know. I think that's what I think. And Dave, what do you think?
I think we're just going through some growing pains. The world is stretching, and who knows, maybe it'll just blow up.
Pat, what do you think?
America.
Hey, Leo, you're being real quiet over there. What do you think? Get close.
I think about the same. Yeah, those muffins look delicious.
Next question.
Looks can be deceiving. And well, yeah, I've been coming here for a month now, in fairness. And then, oh boy, that completely derailed me too. But well, this record is an interesting perspective. Written and recorded in 2015, and I read somewhere that this was sort of like the attempt at a political record. Mm-hmm. So written and recorded in that time period, then released a couple of weeks before the election. I mean, that must be sort of something crazy to think about in terms of the evolution that must have just happened in that 12 months.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, it started out really political, and then I think at the end it became like a sort of a reduction process and became more about the human side of whatever I was thinking or whatever I was feeling. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's impossible for us to be like truly political, because I think politics, eventually all politics will just sort of come to an end, and like people are going to have to deal with each other in a direct human way, as opposed to as opposed to ideologies separating themselves from ideologies. And like I don't really think that way, or at least I don't feel like I do. I think that deep down I'm extremely left and politically radical, but at the same time I humanize every aspect of life, with the exception of maybe corporations or money. I would say that to me the only real division is not totally politics but class. So I think ultimately, like when I came to writing a political record, it became more about class, and then it became more about people, because I couldn't separate the parties, I couldn't separate the ideologies. I just only really saw the rich and the poor, or the haves and the have-nots, and and then ultimately it still ended up being such an emotional sort of record, and I think a lot of the directly political stuff we ended up cutting for the record because it kind of fell flat. Like it seemed like we were not the people, to maybe be voicing this stuff. I think there's a lot of insane amounts of political strife right now, and I think our role in it shouldn't be silence. I think that we should be in solidarity with everyone that's being disenfranchised by capitalism, that's being disenfranchised by, sort of like the separation between people who have privilege and people who don't. I believe that we should be trying to unify society in a way that's not based around money, that's not based around whatever And I don't think we should be silent about that. But at the same time, I don't think that I'm necessarily the right person to be a spokesman. I think that political records can also be very chic and very in vogue, and I was very worried about, maybe it was because of the election year, I was very worried about it being like a whatever cool political record, you know. And I just feel like maybe other people did it better than me. So I think it started out that way and then was reduced in it. Maybe at some point the political B-sides will come out and there'll be some whatever, you know, reaction to that. I don't know if there will be, you know, or whatever. If we do that, we'll probably just leak it on the internet.
No, well, you all did a damn good job with the record.
Well, thank you.
I do want to put that out there.
Cheers.
And as someone who has always sort of been against celebrity culture, you must feel both terrified and absolutely proven right that Donald Trump is a candidate, major party candidate.
Yeah,
for the United States.
Obviously, it's like you spend. Whatever like I've said this so many times. When I was a child, I recognized so many problems of the world, and now that I'm an adult, it's like the same problems exist. And you know, I was reading an interview with Noam Chomsky, and he was talking about. The interviewer was just like, "Aren't you sick of talking about the same stuff forever?" And he was just like, "Well, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like, am I supposed to ignore it or move on to other topics or whatever?" It's just like, you know, it's always there. It's unfortunately it's going to get worse before it gets better. You know what I mean? Like, there's really I don't see salvation for this country. I see it digging itself into a deeper hole, a deeper spiritual hole. You know what I mean? Like, the problem is there's no connection, there's no understanding between people. There's more interest in celebrity, you know what I mean? Then let's take even music, let alone politics. What, you know, most of the time, the things that I feel like are getting repped or you see being talked about have nothing to do with music, you know, at all. You know what I mean? Most of my friends that I feel like have decided to go after music as opposed to go after, you know, some kind of political angle to sell their stuff, you know, they just end up being sort of ignored, you know? I think it's even hard for us. Like, we love music and we put out records and we're constantly told, like, you need to really tweet about, you know, the muffin you had today. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with what I want to do. Like, I want to put out records, but unfortunately, nobody's interested in that anymore. I mean, somebody still is, because there's still radio and there's still people, whatever, that come to our shows. But it's like, to me, again, it's just going to become worse and worse and worse. And I think, can I say bullshit?
I edited this all,
okay.
So please.
I think people can smell the bullshit. I think people can tell when something is wrong. But again, they love it. You know what I mean? And I think, if anything, it's taught us that if we want to pursue art and we want to pursue music, we have to do it in a solitary way. And I think a lot of this record explored those themes, like exploring personal ideas of art and music and all those things, and not expecting the populace to follow us. You know what I mean? I don't really think that mainstream culture is going to figure out a way to digest art. You know what I mean? And I think, like, even whatever, from the 60s on, there's just been this decline, the same way the United States has been declining. And if you travel around and see the United States like we have, you realize that it's not one thing. It's not people are only interested in celebrity and not interested in art. It's a symptom of a greater spiritual crisis that's happening in this country. You know, and maybe it's information speeding up. I have no idea what it is. Maybe it's the fact that, like, people can't make those leaps of faith like they used to when there was less information and there was less things, and you still had to get through life and you still had to provide for your friends and your family and whatever, not just monetarily, but you had to, like, be there for them, you know. And again, I don't believe, obviously, in this delusion that America was great ever. You know what I mean? This country was built on incredible tragedy. So I don't think that there was a great, you know, these great old days or whatever, because there was always somebody being disenfranchised. There was always somebody suffering, and there were, you know, just because it was swept under the rug and the culture was happy with that doesn't mean that it was ever great, who's ever good, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you know, maybe it's better than it's ever been, which is horrifying to think. Like, it's truly horrifying to think that this is the best it's ever been, because everything is caught on camera, everything is out in the open, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And people still prefer their comfort, they still prefer, you know, the illusion of life. And again, it's the American dream is more like the American illusion, you know, that society is intact. And, you know, yeah, maybe it is the best it's ever been, because we can actually see it fall apart at the seams, as opposed to, you know, something else.
Very true, and I want to go back to a point you raised a couple of minutes ago, just sort of like about having to constantly tweet and promote things. You tweeted out a brilliant picture of the band on like some promo appearance where it was clear that the journalists did not know who you guys were. You put on like morning television.
Yeah.
And in this promotion culture, when people just sort of like throw out like, oh, you have merchandise on the show today. I mean, there are people who clearly don't know who you are. That must make for awkward promo appearances. What has been like one of the worst?
And you know what? Everybody loved that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we've done so much press to promote records. We've put out records. We've made music videos. We've done all these things that I feel like are from our personal general interests. Mm-hmm. And the thing that people loved is the total fluff of morning television. Do you know what I mean? No substance. Just give me immediacy. Give me like a visual. Give me nothing, essentially, you know what I mean? And give me a joke. Give me irony, you know what I mean? Our band's not really based around irony. You see stuff all the time become completely successful because of its, like, embrace of irony. I'm sick to death of irony. Like, I'm not interested in it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of why I always gravitated towards sort of whatever romantic or classical art or mythology, you know what I mean? These things that were like non-ironic, as opposed to whatever we're living in now. And yeah, people loved the American, whatever, the
morning show.
Good Morning America, Tampa Bay or whatever, because it was so instant and vapid. And that was also a turning point for us. You know, part of me thinks, like, should we just play this angle forever and just be like should we embrace irony, or should we continue to do what we've done, which is like seriously write and record music that we think is important and represent the voice that we want in this world, you know? And I still choose the latter, even though it's, you know, unsuccessful, or, you know, like, people would love it if we, you know, I don't understand this culture where you have to, like, you know, you have to argue with people over the internet, and you have to fight with people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You have to bring them into some sort of like zone of, I don't know, self-importance and whatever. And I don't think I was raised that way. You know, my mother didn't imbue me with that sort of thing, where it's just like, you know, you have to tear everyone to shit in order to like make it, you know. Obviously, it's done very well for a lot of people in politics. It's done very well for a lot of people in music. And I don't even think I take the higher ground. I think it's just like, I just don't have the confidence to be an asshole. You know what I mean? To be like this kind of person.
Very
you know,
true.
and again, it's not just politics. It's music. It's art. It's business. It's again, it pays into the illusion of life. It pays into this American illusion of just sort of like people being like, I'm the loudest, or I am the most angry, and therefore I'm correct, you know, as opposed to the person in the argument who's saying nothing, you know. Mm-hmm. I think we've always been preferred silence in that way, as opposed to just being like, you know, competing with this sort of whatever, this way that things go. And again, you know, we'll continue to do, if we're given a platform, we'll continue to prank people as much as we can, but I feel like we have to do it in unexploitable ways, because I don't really enjoy exploitation in a direct way. I like exploiting the already blatantly exploited, because it seems like it's a different kind of thing altogether. It transcends exploitation in some weird backwards Duchamp kind of way. Mm-hmm. But we never plan that kind of thing. The things that we plan are always these like serious classical sort of ideas, and then, you know, here we are in America where, you know, substance is the backseat, and, you know,
well, and the other,
it's very strange.
Well, it is very strange. The other thing what's especially strange is, I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me. Your target audience probably wouldn't be 40 to 55-year-old white women, which would be who would be watching morning television. Too.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, if they're out the show,
but
great.
also 40 to 50-year-old Belgian men, like we're quite popular.
Yeah, that is our main.
Seriously,
And it sort of ranges.
Year old Belgian men.
Yeah, and there's also quite a bit of people in Russia and Estonia, Croatia, South America.
People with more, I guess, serious mindsets or less ironic. Just
or they have less of a comfortable illusion of life, and their society is based in something much harsher. As opposed to here, where I think it's maybe everything's entertainment. I think in other places it's not necessarily entertainment, but I don't really know. I don't know how to consume us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what is the right way to do it. We've always just we've come out of this thing where people would get deep into something and like find deep tracks or appreciate something very wild and deep, and so it is really, when you're promoting a record in the United States, you're pretty much just like, all right, we're put into the conveyor belt, the sort of the line that everything else is going into, and it's fine, because ultimately it's like, for us, it's the record, it's the work, it's not the promotional side necessarily. Obviously we love sitting down and talking about stuff and totally unpredictable settings, or it's hard for me not to take this mic and just go over and talk to these other people over here.
Well, true.
They might have something interesting to say too, as opposed to just whatever me.
If I brought a camera, I swear to God, we would totally be doing that. And this probably isn't the best form for me to be pretending to be a holier-than-thou journalist when I have you on the coffee shop, and again, don't have seats for all of you.
But
so,
humility is important,
It
is. It's good to kick yourself in the balls every once in a while. Excuse my French.
No, totally. And then this will be a question for y'all. Do you have a question that you want to ask each other that you never have a chance to ask? I mean, I know you spend a lot of time together.
Oh my God. Dave, do you have a question for Leo or anybody? Leo, do you have a question?
I was watching this girl barely clean up her mess on the floor.
Yeah. Do you want to ask her a question?
No, but it's pretty disgusting to watch.
Dave, do you want to ask your question?
Pat, when will it all end?
When that big rock comes out of the sky, Dave. Whenever Yellowstone finally explodes and puts this consciousness that we call America on its deathbed, only then can we find peace, Dave.
Thank you, and we'll be on all the new government watch lists once this interview is aired.
Don't worry, you'll still be able to buy a gun.
Especially in Florida.
Especially in Florida. There we go.
I have to go move before the Boston Police Power van.
Pat, what's your favorite thing about parking a van with 15 passenger seats in it?
I love to parallel park. I think I have an addiction. There's a problem.
Would you say it makes you horny?
I think the thrill of nailing it in that spot.
It's not parallel parking itself. It's getting it in one smooth stroke.
Wow.
That was a very sensual answer.
It was. A little more than I was expecting. 40 to 50-year-old Belgian men will be excited.
They are excitable.
Let's see. I'm losing band members, so I'm going to wrap this up, I promise. If you guys could cover one album like front to back, make it a merchandise album.
Book of Ghosts by David Vesselati. It's his first record.
Really?
Yeah, and we're probably going to do it when we hit the 10-year anniversary.
That'd be cool.
It's coming up very soon.
This has been sort of planned for a long time, because Book of Ghosts is sort of it came out when it's a very formative time for the band, and I feel like it was like sort of another release. And maybe it'll be 10 years, maybe it'll be 15 years, maybe it'll be 20 years, but we're going to do it from front to back, and legally it's probably the easiest one for us to get away with.
That is very fair.
Yeah. And
then who have you guys been listening to recently? Who's been on in the van?
I listened to Nina Simone at Newport today.
Oh, nice.
And before our stereo broke, we were listening to Congotronics and a couple of some African sort of field recordings and stuff.
A lot of Bobby Hutcherson and Albert Eiler. We got a whole shoebox full of free jazz CDs in Tampa. And
John Coltrane.
Yeah, just losing our minds.
Well, that's good. I feel like we covered a lot. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
Just, that if anyone is coming to see us, that they bring us weed. That's really the only That's the only thing I want to say.
More stuff for the cops to dig into us with.
Well, you heard the men. The album is called A Corpse Wired for Sound. The band is called Merchandise. Thank you guys so much for meeting me today, and have a great
Thank you. It was a wonderful interview. Thank you so much.